San Diego is taking center stage for the Democratic presidential race, the key speech by Hillary Clinton that may help her secure the California contest.
The voice to speak up and have the freedom to speak our mind, because in Burma there's no such things.
The refugees in San Diego who want to make sure every vote counts, their campaign to improve voter turnout at next week's primary.
I am very excited by it. You know, personal items just bring you close to other soldiers. Soldiers wore rings like this.
And using modern tools to understand history, the clues left behind at the site of an 18th century battle. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amitha Sharma. University officials say the UCLA campus will be reopened tomorrow following a deadly shooting today that brought hundreds of heavily armed officers to campus and forced students to barricade themselves inside classrooms. Fears of an active shooter on campus prompted an intensive sweep of the area by local and federal authorities. LAPD Chief Charlie Beck says the two men were found dead inside a small office in an engineering building, and a gun was found nearby. Investigators say it is considered a murder-suicide.
But I think the important thing for people to take away from this is that the campus is now safe. The issue that has occurred has been contained.
It's unclear if the two men were students, staff, or visitors, and the relationship between them was also unknown. The brush fire in the Pala area of North County is about 15% contained. Authorities say the 100 residents who were evacuated from the area have been allowed back. Officials say the blaze initially engulfed a two-story home on Pala Temecula Road. The cause is still under investigation. No other structures were damaged and no injuries reported. Hillary Clinton is scheduled to speak tomorrow morning in San Diego, less than a week before the California primary. It's the Democratic presidential candidate's first visit to San Diego during this primary season. She's scheduled to give a speech outlining her foreign policy at the Prado in Balboa Park at 11:30 a.m. The speech comes as part of Clinton's overall strategy to spend more time in California in the run-up to Tuesday's election, when she faces Democratic rival Senator Bernie Sanders. A Democratic presidential hopeful robbed of voters. That's one of the arguments made by a Bernie Sanders supporter in a lawsuit rejected today by a federal judge. The Voting Rights Defense Project claimed elections officials in California are robbing unaffiliated voters of the chance to cast their ballots in the state's primary next Tuesday. The group also wanted an injunction on radio and TV ads informing unaffiliated voters that they can vote in primary contests for Democratic, American Independent, and Libertarian parties. For the first time in years, San Diego voters are seeing TV ads for a county supervisor's race. KPBS North County Bureau reporter Allison St. John says independent political action committees, or PACs, are outspending candidates for the District 3 seat currently held by Dave Roberts, the lone Democrat on the powerful board.
Seats on the San Diego County Board of Supervisors are seldom contested, partly because the incumbents raise big war chests to the tune of $300,000 to discourage challengers. But this year, Dave Roberts, who is the only Democrat elected to the board in 20 years, is being challenged by two North County mayors, both Republicans, Encinitas Mayor Kristen Gaspar and Escondido Mayor Sam Abed. Now, the candidates have all sent out their own mailers, but the big jumbo mailers that you will see arriving in your mailbox if you live in their district are sponsored by independent business-backed PACs. The PAC that sent out these mailers is called the Citizens for Fair and Honest Leadership and is sponsored by the Regional Chamber of Commerce. We also have TV ads for the first time in a long time in a county supervisor's race, sponsored by a group called the Public Integrity League, which is sponsored by the Lincoln Club. and they have spent more than $135,000 on these ads. So the candidates have each raised a little bit less than $200,000 each this year. Meanwhile, the independent business-backed PACs have spent well over $200,000 to attack Roberts and to support Gaspar. Observers say this is a strategy to make sure that Roberts does not win more than 50% in June and allows one of the two Republican challengers to face him in November. In the KPBS newsroom, I'm Alison St. John.
The City Heights neighborhood has the lowest voter turnout rate in San Diego. It's home to many refugees, some recently resettled. Others have been there for years. KPBS reporter Claire Trageser says some refugees are bucking the trend of the neighborhood by pushing for 100% voter turnout in their communities.
Passe is spending the morning with her grandmother. They live in a two-bedroom City Heights apartment along with Passe's brother and sister. Family portraits shot in a mall photo studio hang on the wall next to a flag from their home country.
So white, blue, and red for bravery.
Passe moved to the U.S. 7 years ago from a refugee camp on the Thailand-Myanmar border. She's now a U.S. citizen with the right to vote.
Like in Burma, like back then, there's no voting and there's no way you're going to have your voice heard.
She calls Myanmar by its former name, Burma. The 21-year-old will cast a ballot this June for the first time in her life.
We can finally have the voice to speak up and have the freedom to speak our mind, because in Burma, there's no such things.
Passe isn't sure yet who she'll vote for. She favors Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton, but hasn't made up her mind. She's ready for her first voting experience and has been working to ensure all of the eligible refugees in San Diego show up to the polls.
I am going to help the Karen people to vote, encourage them to register, and then help them with voting if they need any help.
She's Karen, an ethnic minority in Burma. San Diego has about 1,700 Karen refugees and California about 4,400.
It's their time to shine. I mean, in refugee camp, they don't really have voice, or in Burma, they don't really have voice, but now they have the freedom to vote and to speak up for themselves and for the country and for their community and for their family.
California is home to more than 825,000 refugees. They can become U.S. citizens after 5 years and then can begin to vote. On a recent Sunday at the San Diego Living Water Church in City Heights, another group was getting ready to fill in ballots. The church's congregation is mostly Vietnamese. Some came to the U.S. as refugees when the Vietnam War ended some 40 years ago. When the church service ended, congregants gathered in a back room for watermelon and sticky rice and also to vote. The ballots were in Vietnamese, and people helped each other understand how to fill them in. The church's pastor also brought his laptop and registered people to vote.
This is your responsibility, and so I invite them to vote.
Sophie Tran is working to make sure her community members vote this year.
And we vote for somebody we trust, then our voice will be heard. Because if not, then our voice cannot be heard if you don't vote, so nobody hears you.
Tran is 81 and has been in the U.S. for 41 years. She came here as a refugee when the Vietnam War ended. Now she's working on voter outreach with new refugee groups, like the Karen from Myanmar. She tells them voting is part of being an American.
We have to cooperate with the people that are acclaim us and welcome us to this country, and we have to show our respect to them, our responsibility to them.
Tran wants 100% of the eligible Living Water Church members to cast ballots on June 7th. In San Diego, I'm Claire Trageser.
Video journalist Chris Arciaga helped produce that story. You can find all of our election coverage at kpbs.org/election. More than 80,000 refugees have settled in San Diego County, and thousands more arrive each year. But how do you make a new address into a new home? KPBS Speak City Heights reporter Taryn Mento says a report released today aims to improve this transition.
Refugees are part of our community. They've been here, they are San Diegans, right?
The report by the nonprofit Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans, or PANA, focused on 4 areas of the refugee experience: housing, health, jobs, and education. Community leaders interviewed hundreds of refugees in San Diego, including in City Heights, to identify their needs. PANA founder and executive director Ramla Saeed says the organization will now develop solutions to those needs by focusing on incoming refugees from Syria.
What we're saying is we have an opportunity to work with some of the newest refugees arriving here in San Diego County and to think or rethink resettlement and the resettlement process for them. And if we can produce better outcomes for those families, there's no reason why we can't use those learnings and make it better for all refugees and make it better for all of our families that are disadvantaged and living in poverty.
The new initiative, called the Syrian Refugee Collaborative, is funded by a $150,000 grant from the Leach-Tag Foundation. The organization's executive vice president, Charlene Seidel, says addressing the gaps in the resettlement process will benefit more than just the refugee community.
We know from data that diverse communities improve the overall economic well-being, health, quality, and stature of a community if the immigrant experience is handled correctly by the community.
For Saeed, the initiative is also a personal matter.
And as a refugee woman who grew up in San Diego, it's really important to me that we not only just resettle people, welcome people who are fleeing, violence and persecution, but when we resettle them, we're not forgetting about them.
PANA and the Leach-Tag Foundation hope to identify and implement new resettlement strategies over the next few years and share their findings with government leaders. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
The survey was funded by the California Endowment, which also supports Speak City Heights. President Obama returns to Elkhart, Indiana tonight, the first town he visited after reaching the Oval Office. He's there for a town hall meeting with residents. PBS NewsHour host Gwen Ifill talks to him about the state of the economy and the appeal of so-called straightforward solutions offered by a Republican who wants to replace him.
When we've gone through a tough time, and we went through the worst financial crisis of our lifetimes, I'm looking around, and I think it's safe to say that it's been the worst in the lifetimes or memories of most people here. Then you feel nervous. People lost homes. People lost savings. People were worried about whether or not they could make ends meet. And so even though we've recovered, people feel like the ground under their feet isn't quite as solid. And in those circumstances, a lot of times it's easy for somebody to come up and say, you know what, if we deport all the immigrants and build a wall, or if we cut off trade with China, or if we do X or Y or Z, that there's some simple answer and suddenly everything's going to feel secure.
Why don't you mention Donald Trump by name?
You know, he seems to do a good job mentioning his own name. So I figure, I'll let him do his advertising for him.
Do you consider at all?
You can see more of Gwen's conversation with the president tonight at 7 p.m. on the NewsHour. Then at 8 o'clock, a special edition of the NewsHour with the president's town hall conversation covering the election, the economy, and America's role in the world. That's right here on KPBS. A group of non-union construction companies blasted a labor deal today that would hire union workers to build the proposed Chargers football stadium and convention center annex downtown. Representatives from the companies held a press conference calling on taxpayers to object to the deal, known as a project labor agreement, on grounds that it is hidden favoritism. After the press conference, a local GOP leader and union chief squared off over the issue.
He's got to pay you off.
That's what a union contract is. And he also has protections that the unions provide. He actually gets a health and welfare. He gets a retirement program. He gets a lot of things. That's why people join the unions.
They don't get benefits. They choose where to work in a free country like America is. But they have to go through you, a union boss. You got to pay. How much does it cost to get a job? How much do they have to pay you off to get a job? Shame on you. Shame on you. You're going to defend that?
I'm going to defend it all day long.
The Chargers' proposed stadium initiative needs about 67,000 signatures to qualify for the November 8th ballot. For the fourth year in a row, a citizen panel has voted to increase the pay of Governor Jerry Brown and other top elected California officials by 4%. Lawmakers' salaries were slashed 18% during the recession. They are still below where they were in 2007. The governor's new salary is about $190,000 per year. The salary for the heads of the Senate and Assembly will go up to $120,000. The deadline is approaching for California lawmakers to vote on hundreds of bills. The House and Senate will hold lengthy floor voting sessions and debates on controversial issues like gun control. Some lawmakers say the number of bills is overwhelming.
Every idea has to be codified into law. We pass an awful lot of bills here in California. We're probably too much of a bill factory, and that should change. We should probably be a little bit more deliberative and introduce fewer bills.
Bills passed out of their House of Origin still require a vote by the other house. That process will likely begin next week. Beekeepers and food justice advocates are rallying to keep California bees alive. They support a new bill called the California Pollinator Protection Act, which would limit the sale of pesticides known as neonics and promote the use of bee-friendly seeds that help to protect the declining bee population.
Bees are critical to the food and farming system. They're responsible for 1 in 3 bites of food we eat, as well as over $6 billion in the California economy alone. So bees are critical.
Lawmakers are expected to take up the California Pollinator Protection Act this week. It is getting hot in San Diego. The first major heat wave of the season is prompting an excessive heat watch from the National Weather Service. Heather Waldman has the forecast in tonight's KPBS Weather Report.
It was a beautiful day in the Golden State. We're looking at more great weather as we get closer to this weekend, and temperatures, especially inland, are really going to heat up. Coastal areas staying comfortable, but even here, temperatures will end up well above average. No trace of rain here across California. Showers, though, into central and southern New Mexico. Tonight in San Diego County, temperatures staying pretty mild, even at the water. Mid to upper 60s in Oceanside and San Diego. Mid 50s there in Ramona. We'll stay at 75 in Mecca. The desert, of course, going to be one of our hot spots. Temperatures will get close to the triple digits in parts of Southern California. It's all because we have this very strong area of high pressure developing right over Las Vegas around that high clockwise flow, bringing up a southerly breeze. And that's going to help to keep most of the clouds at bay for the California coast. There could certainly be a little hint of that marine layer, especially during the morning. But later in the afternoon, thanks to that strong area of high pressure, sinking air will lead to more sunshine for the entire region. Very nice weather coming up here in the California area. Here's a look at the 5-day forecast of the coast. And again, warm, not as hot as it could be thanks to that marine influence, but we'll make it to 80 degrees on Saturday with a mix of clouds and sunshine before cooling back off early next week. A little bit more seasonal. Monday's high 73 degrees. Few clouds in the morning, followed by partial sunshine each afternoon. Inland, a bit warmer. Temperature gets to 80 degrees on Saturday, upper 70s leading into that. The sunshine, of course, will make it feel a bit warmer, so do keep that in mind. Make sure you've got the sunscreen, drinking plenty of water if you're going out for a hike this weekend or looking to hit the beach. Overnight lows will stay in the mid-60s inland. Into the mountains, boy, look at these temperatures going up. Close to 90 degrees on Saturday. These temperatures a good 10 to 15 degrees above the average. And of course, the bright sun only makes it feel warmer as well as we go through June, July, and August. That sun very strong. So again, make sure you've got the sunscreen ready. We will cool off a bit into early next week. So this little burst of heat doesn't last for too long. Overnight lows will be in the mid-50s for a few nights, upper 40s coming up there on Monday night. Final stop takes us to the deserts where it is going to be scorching, near records possible. In fact, as you head eastward towards Vegas and in Phoenix, we'll be into the 1-teens Friday and Saturday. Even overnight, not a whole lot of temperatures dropping. We'll be in the 70s. So very warm starts to the day. If you're looking to get out and about, before sunrise and after sunset are going to be your best times. I'm Heather Waldman for KPBS News.
A mystery from the Revolutionary War may be solved by some tech-savvy archaeology students. In tonight's SciTech Report, producer Frank Graff takes a look at the evidence dug up from the site of an 18th century battle.
Right here, you see how the signal gets a little different right here? Mm-hmm. See how the signal is?
It's kind of dark. It's darker right in there, right?
Exactly.
Ari Lucas is not cutting or fertilizing the grass. He is trying to solve a Revolutionary War mystery. That rolling tool he's using is ground-penetrating radar.
It's like we're doing every half meter, we're going to do a transect.
Archaeology students and faculty from the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, are investigating a forest clearing at Guilford Courthouse National Military Park in Greensboro. So this is saying, hey, there's something unusual
right here.
here.
And if you look up here, it has to go across meters. Mm-hmm. Each one of these is it's about 2 meters. So it tells you actually to come out here about 3 meters is kind of where it starts, and it's actually kind of goes for about another meter. It's about 1.5 meters wide.
Probably evidence of the road.
Exactly.
What do you think when you see that? That's kind of cool.
It is. It's like, you know, it's kind of cool thing about this because, like you said, you don't really know for sure what's underneath the ground. But it makes your imagination go wild. So it's kind of fun because it kind of brings up the kid in all of us. You know what I mean? You're like, what could it be?
Right. Back on March 15th, 1781, British soldiers fought through 3 lines of American troops and militiamen in the area.
It was all happening through thick woods, and the smoke was hanging in the air. There was a lot of what we call small firefights.
Despite having an army half the size, the colonials fought a bloody battle, trying to slow the British advance through the South.
So General Greene thought this was good ground because there were 3 ridge lines he could put his troops on, and then he would have a good avenue of escape if he didn't win the battle, and General Greene never really expected to win the battle.
Archaeologists want to find what's known as the Retreat Road. It's the path on which General Nathanael Greene led his troops to escape. While the general area of the battle is known, the specific locations aren't.
And that's what the archaeology really is about, the locations and the artifacts and the telling the story. We don't know the location of the courthouse. And of course, the courthouse is the landmark of the time.
500 British soldiers were killed or wounded. The Patriots suffered 300 casualties and retreated. But it was a costly victory because the British lost almost a quarter of their army. That set the stage for their eventual surrender at Yorktown and the end of the Revolution. Those are the facts, but understanding history is knowing much more than facts. In the past, archaeologists would make sample test digs around a property in hopes of finding something.
We're kind of subtracting from 10, so it's a little different. So we're going to be at 7.
But that random digging is expensive and time-consuming. Examining an area with ground-penetrating radar before digging is much more efficient.
And it sends a radio wave down. And so the whole thing a GPR looks for is change. The more change, the better. So if this was sand all the way down, you would get the same signal all the way down. But if it's a big rock wall or something under there, it'll hit that change. And once it hits that change, it sends a signal back like that and says, this is not what I've been going through. So that's basically what we look for when we're doing that. And we can look, this is the profile, so what you're actually looking at is a slice downward.
It could be a soil change. It could be a rock. It could be a geologic change. So it's just showing us contrast with the Earth's surface.
The data is loaded into a computer, which creates a profile image of what's below ground.
You see that road starting to pop up, that side road that we saw? And as we move through these profiles, we can go down and see other things start.
These materials are different kinds of knife blades that you can see here.
These items were found when the radar detected a concentration of objects, along with what turned out to be a row of stones. Archaeologists dug 11 test pits and 6 trenches near the site. Almost 900 items were brought to the university's archaeology lab, cleaned and cataloged.
X% are found that relate to the kitchen. I could say how many are related to architecture, how many related to the battle.
The exact location of the retreat road isn't pinpointed yet, but historians have a much better idea of its likely location.
I am very excited by it. And, you know, personal items just bring you close to other soldiers. Soldiers wore rings like this, but so did everyday people. So the hardest thing for us is to be able to hold something up and say, this is definitely a soldier's.
I think it's important to know it, to place this whole landscape in its context.
You can get more stories like that one on SciTech Now, Sundays at 5:30 here on KPBS. An elephant in South Africa got his 15 minutes of fame. Former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger recorded this heart-stopping moment when an elephant charged after him while on safari. Schwarzenegger captioned the video, encouraging people to stop killing elephants. The former governor was in South Africa promoting a multi-sport festival. More than 60,000 spectators will head to the Q tonight. The Mexico versus Chile soccer match kicks off at 7 p.m. It will be a friendly warm-up for the Copa America. That tournament begins June 4th. The first match will feature the U.S. and Colombia. Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom on Morning Edition. San Diego State's mascot has survived student petitions, campus referendums, and an NCAA ban. But is the Aztec mascot racist? A lecturer at the university says yes and says it needs to go. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.